for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Bookie November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
Nigerian Medical Association supports strike by resident doctors and gives the federal government 21 days to resolve issues. The Secretary General of the NMA will be talking to us this morning. And confusion over electricity tariff as a coal distribution company retracts circular notifying consumers of an increase. We'll take a look at the tariffs, grid collapse and the power supply. Plus a look at the papers this morning and of course a review of some of the major stories making headlines across Nigeria today. You don't want to miss it. And with that we say good morning and welcome to another week and a Monday morning here on The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. I am Osaugi Ogbonwa. We hope that we have a very interesting week ahead of us. Good morning once again. We always will start with the top trending stories and share with you some of the biggest stories across Nigeria from the weekend and till this morning. And I'll start with a really sad one, and that is the death, the reported killing of a son of a 7th senator. Is the Senate Majority Leader, Bala Ibn Na'ala. His son, Captain Ibn Na'ala, was killed over the weekend in Kaduna State. There's a lot of controversy concerning this, because first of all, it's coming just a few days after the attack on the Nigerian Defense Academy. And so there have been lots of worries from northern Nigeria and from Kaduna State. We hope that we'll be able to speak with Samuel Adowan, who is the Commissioner for Security and Home Affairs, sometime during the week to share his thoughts on what exactly the situation is. But it's another very, very sad incident, not just because of the personality and, the fact that he's the son of a senator, but, the fact that it seems to be getting worse. From reports, he was killed in his home by bandits. Last week, I had, a quick thought on what exactly we need to do and what Nigerian and the Nigerian government needs to do to share some clarity on exactly what we are dealing with. Who are the bandits and, how did they emerge? What exactly, are they fighting for? Are these just mere criminals? Because, when you hear of killings across Nigeria and you don't hear that anything has been stolen or anybody has been robbed, it feels weird calling them just bandits. So are these the same people with the Boko Haram sect? Are these an entirely, different, group of armed, criminals or militia? Who exactly are they? It's pretty much the same thing when we talk about unknown gunmen. How, is it that for more than a year now, we've been hearing about unknown gunmen and we still have no idea who unknown gunmen are? They have not, the Nigerian government has not been able to unmask any of these elements. And pretty much the same thing with just, given a group of criminals the name bandits. Who exactly are they? I've also seen a couple of comments on the social media platforms saying very, very, very sad comments, but basically saying, well, now that it's getting close to home, the Nigerian government may act, which I don't agree with. I believe that every single Nigerian life should be valued and should be protected, and no death should be spoken about in a way like that. So it's a really, really sad story. And we hope that there is some clarity. We hope that these people will be apprehended, as of course the Nigerian government and the state security services would always promise that whoever it is that carried out these atrocities will be apprehended and will be made to face the full wrath of the law. We've heard that so many times, but we still don't see, as Nigerians, don't see a lot of these things actually happening. And that is these bandits or these criminals, these militants facing the full wrath of the law. Pretty much the same thing was said when the Nigerian Defense Academy was attacked, and we lost 3 Nigerian army officers. The government said pretty much the same thing, that these people will be apprehended and will be made to face the law. But it's days after. There's still no news about these people being apprehended. We still do not know exactly what Nigeria's security situation is and what must be done. Where is the honesty? And it's one thing that I've mentioned a couple of times. Where's the honesty with dealing with these issues? And if we cannot have some level of honesty with why these things are difficult to address, why it is difficult to find the people who are sponsoring these bandits, why it's difficult to, close our borders, and ensure that there's less weapons proliferation across Nigeria, because these are some of the answers. How do weapons get to these people? Those weapons aren't locally made; they're not made here in Nigeria. How do they get to the hands of these, these criminals? Who are the people sponsoring these criminals? How have we gone almost a decade, more than a decade actually, and Nigeria still is not able to point out 10, 5, 2, 1 person who has been arrested for financially supporting these terrorists and these bandits? Makes very little sense, but. Once again, rest in peace to Captain Bin Allah, and we hope that the family will be able to get over this period. Also, let's move to Kano State, where the Kano Hisbah has gotten, some criticism for putting out a statement over the weekend as to why they treat the rich and the poor different. The representative was speaking over the weekend and gave reasons for gave reasons why the Kano Hisbah doesn't, carry out the same treatment that they give to the poor on the rich. And this is coming off a couple of events that have taken place in the last few weeks, where some of the things that the Kano Hisbah has openly spoken about and has criticized others for and has sent people to Sharia court for have been ignored. But it's the same reason that these people carry out, cut people's hair in public, ban the sale of alcohol, destroy some business places, and give some really shocking laws that must be followed by people in Kano State and in parts of the country that there is the Sharia law. The Kano Hisbah said that they treat the rich and the poor different because it is part of Sharia and Islam not to criticize leaders. Well, that might make sense to him and to the Kano Hisbah for putting out a statement like that, because they had to say something. But some of all these things still don't make a lot of sense to Nigerians, and it still sounds very hypocritical. One of the challenges that I have with that is that it means that the interpretation or their interpretation of Islam and the Sharia law doesn't include holding leaders accountable. For very many years now, people have pointed out the fact that the northern part of Nigeria seems to have the worst with regards to infrastructural development, education, healthcare. The benefits of being in a democracy and having a government. They seem to have the worst of it. But there still isn't a loud voice from that part of the country demanding better governance. There's still, look at the amount of IDPs, look at the amount of our Almajiri kids, out of school children. It's the largest number across the country. They've also suffered the worst with regards to insecurity. But there still isn't a large voice from that part of the country asking for better governance, asking for better government, asking for more responsibility from their government at every level, from the local to the state to the federal. There still isn't. And when it's time to vote, you still see a large number of these people trooping out to vote simply based on religion. And from what the Kano Hisbah has said, it means that there will not be any criticism for government simply because that's what their interpretation of Sharia or Islam, tells. So when you are, a part of that, area in Nigeria, you should not criticize government. Neither should you be able to criticize your leaders, because what they're saying is, Islam tells us to not criticize our leaders, and that's the reason we would rather, cut off the hair of a poor man in the streets than do the same thing to a rich man's child, because not every single person is a leader. Not every rich, influential person in the north is a leader. It might just be rich businessmen. And you see them and their kids being able to dress freely in northern Nigeria, but the less influential, poor, cannot, have the same privileges. And so that's really what it means. And also the fact that religion is a tool of control in many, many parts of the world. And the reason I say this is the people from northern Nigeria, when they read a statement like this, will not be able to spot the hypocrisy with that statement, because they would simply understand that, well, that's what the interpretation of Islam and Sharia law teaches. And so they would basically just fall in line with that statement, instead of pointing out the hypocrisy with the actions of the Kano Hizbah. And so it gives them less of a voice to point out that hypocrisy, and they will simply fall in line, because once it has been coated or sugar-coated with religious coverings, then there's really no voice that can be heard. Well, that's it, with regards to Kano Hizbah and their statements. We also would point, and celebrate this morning Bose Ola Omolayo. I almost forgot her name. And congratulations to her. She's one of Nigeria's Paralympic athletes who has just won gold at the Tokyo Paralympic Games by lifting 141 kilograms weight. She came first. Next, of course, was a Paralympic athlete from Ukraine, Natalia Olink from Ukraine, who lifted 133. And bronze was by Vera Murofava, a Russian Federation athlete with 132 kilograms lifting. So congratulations to Bose. She's, of course, one of the people who has made Nigeria proud over the weekend. Last week, we spoke about supporting the Paralympians as much as we possibly can. They should be given as much support financially and media-wise. They should be spoken about. They should be celebrated. They should be brought back home as heroes. And we shouldn't always remember them only when it's time for the Paralympic Games. These are people who have done Nigeria exceptionally well. And one thing that I said is, what is the thing about the Paralympians? What is the reason they have continued to break these boundaries and win these medals that is different from the other athletes? Is it the training is different? Are they getting better support, with equipment and with training? Or do they just have a totally different space compared to other athletes, Nigerian athletes at the Olympics and any other games? That's something that I hope that we would understand. But most importantly, we must celebrate people like her. We must celebrate every other Paralympian who has done Nigeria proud, won gold, silver, or bronze, and they should be brought back to Nigeria and given a red carpet treatment, because that's exactly what we should do. Finally, also in sports, we're going to move to talking about Arsenal and Manchester City over the weekend. It was a complete whitewashing of the Arsenal Football Club. Manchester City won that game 5-0. But that's not what our top trending is. I hope that we can quickly play a short clip for you where the Arsenal fans sang a song, or were, given a chant at the stadium saying, "You're nothing special, we lose every weekend." Hilarious. And one thing I think everyone should do, go on YouTube, all right? Look out for fan chants in stadiums. You see some of the most hilarious lines that they chant. Some of them, might be a little racist every now and then, but the most hilarious chants in the stadium is what you get to see in the EPL. All right, so let's quickly share that clip with you, and I'll come back to talk about it. Even if I enjoy laughing at Arsenal, this is on a totally different level of hilarious. And it really just tells the mood of Arsenal fans who have completely given up on the club. Don't care about Mikel Arteta or any of his, his policies. I saw a lot of people complaining over the weekend about how he needs to be sacked. There's no way that he can win anything or he can go, far this season with the team that he has or with that coach. And it makes you kind of feel bad for Arsenal, but I would find any reason to laugh at Arsenal, and this is one very, very special reason. I've saved that video on my phone and I'll play it all through the week. We lose every week. You're nothing special. We lose every week. Welcome to The Breakfast once again. Stay with us. We'll take a short break. When we come back, Tunde Kolawole will be joining us for Off the Press here on The Breakfast. Good morning.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Welcome to your favorite program, The Moment of Truth, brought to you by the Citadel Global Community Church. Our God is a God of salvation, far above all principality and power, and might and dominion, that regardless of what happens in this season, you will escape. Say to your neighbor, there is no peace for the wicked. The lazy man does not rouse what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might.
Moment of Truth with Pastor Tunde Bakare, Sundays, 7 p.m. on PlusTvAfrica.
Politics has helped shape the decision of the polity, from conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned comic politics.
These are the results of tomorrow's election. You have it already.
I am not hungry. If I need appointment, all I need to do is to start praising government.
Plus, politics will fill the polls of the country, from friends to frenemies, even strange bedfellows, to clones and stooges. We go beyond the rhetorics and the drama to analyze the story behind the story.
Let anybody come and say. The moment we stop having charlatans occupy political offices, we will curtail hate speech.
Plus Politics, not just another political show. It's about putting you, the citizens, in the know. What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Na 2,500 they pay.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the barbing, I pay my rent. From the barbing, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Welcome once again to The Breakfast here on PlusTvAfrica. And now let's go to Off the Press, where we have a quick review of the stories making headlines across Nigeria today. We're going to be kicking off with the Daily Independent. And of course, our guest, Tunde Kolawole, a legal practitioner, will be joining us via phone. Good morning, Mr. Kolawole.
Good morning, my brother.
Thanks for joining us.
How was your weekend?
It was beautiful. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
Now let's start with the Daily Independent newspaper. It should be on your screen in just a few seconds. Yes, it says travel at risk as vandalism of airports' critical equipment spikes. How Nigeria can cut $1 billion annual importation of egg powder. And also we trekked 4 days to our abductor's den, says the Free Tejina Islamia school pupils. Emirates extend ban on Nigerian flights till September. And also, Dangote's $2 billion petrochemical plant to produce 77 grades of polypropylene. Still on the Daily Independent, why Secondus may not return as PDP national chairman. And controversy trails death of Captain Bala Nala's, who's a Kebbi senator's son. Paralympics, Nigeria's Omolayo wins gold, sets new record. These are some of the big ones on the Daily Independent. Now let's quickly see what we can find on the Nation newspapers. Just a few stories. We can see here, Kayamo, government unaware of planned power tariff hike. Also on the Nation, gunmen kill senator's son. NMA issues, NMA's 21-day strike notice unfair, says Ngige. And why revenue formula needs review, and that's by the RMAFC. There's also a big story. It's court proceedings. A court sacked Taiwo Lakanu, Amcon receiver and manager from Nikon. I'm not sure what this is about, but it also makes the headlines on the Punch this morning, and we could also quickly just share one or two from the Punch. It says 21-day notice, strike dangerous now. Federal government begs doctors, NMA ministry all disagree. ASU threatens fresh strike, gives federal government Tuesday ultimatum And also government implements cooking gas imports tax. Price jumps by 100%. NMA faults federal government as minister rejects ultimatum. Citizens' lives under threat, Ehanire laments. That's some of the stories on the Punch this morning. And finally, we're going to take stories from the Guardian newspapers. Despite approvals, absence of port scanners cost government 800 billion naira monthly. Also on the Guardian this morning, handle insecurity creatively, editors advise government. Nigeria needs new revenue sharing formula to address emerging challenges. And also Singapore vaccinates 80% of population against COVID-19. NMA threatens to join doctor strike, gives federal government 21-day ultimatum. That's also on the Guardian this morning. Just a few stories across the papers this morning. I'll start with one of the stories on the Daily Independent, I believe. Anyway, good morning, Mr. Kolawole. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, my brother.
All right.
How was your weekend again?
It was beautiful. Let's start with the story from the proposed strike by ASU. They've given the federal government till Tuesday, another ultimatum till Tuesday. What are your thoughts on that? And put that side by side with the NMA also threatening to join the resident doctors strike in another 21 days.
Well, my brother, these are very troubling times for us as a nation. All those institutions that you have mentioned, the ASU, the NMA, they all represent very critical sectors of the economy. And as such, it is not desirable at all when any of those people go on strike. Take, for example, the medical people. You and I are quite aware that the nation is going through very serious problems in the area of the COVID pandemic. The Delta variant, which is considered to be more virulent and which spreads faster, has begun to ravage the country. And the support that the government and the organized private sector were given when this COVID-19 started, that kind of massive support that we saw is no longer coming as it used to come. So if the medical people now go on strike, the possibilities are that the nation might be witnessing a lot of casualties in the health sector. Furthermore, if ASU begins another round of strike, the possibilities are that our children who had stayed at home before now for almost 2 years because of this ASU strike will again return home. And of course, you know the implication of that. The devil will find jobs for a idle hand to do. That's why you find out they will now come again and join the unemployment market, which is already 33% of the employable persons in the country. The girls who embark on nefarious activities, courtesan will be on the rise, and all manners of undesirable behaviors will be seen among these children. To that extent, I will want to appeal to the federal government, in the name of God, to please honor the agreement that they have signed with the NMA, with the resident medical doctors, and then with the ASU. Agreement is an agreement. Once individual, once adult, able adult, whose eyes do have their minds and thinking faculties, enter when they are entering an agreement, you are supposed to honor whatever agreement you were signed or entered with the people. And especially when it is an industrial agreement, which you executed in the full glare of a camera and before the whole Nigerian people. And now you begin to say differently. This is not edifying at all. It doesn't paint a very good picture for us, both internally and externally. So the ball is in the court of the federal government. It is also in the court of the state government that they should, for God's sake, in the name of what is good and desirable, please honor whatever agreement they have signed with the medical people and with the ASU so that we don't witness another strike in there. And the lessons again for those who work in those areas, like I used to say, it's desirable for them to strive for good governance all over the country. Until you have had good governance all over the country, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to have a rational allocation of resources across board, such as both health, education, infrastructure, and all other areas of our society will be adequately taken care of. The kind of people we have at the end of affairs today are like locusts who are just ravaging the country in such a manner that they leave little or nothing for the other sectors of the economy to be able to develop.
All right. I'm going to say good morning also to Ezekiel Inyayetok, who's also joining us on Off the Press this morning. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, let's also get your thoughts on the threat by ASU to once again, resume their strike on Tuesday. And the NMA, also giving the government 21 days ultimatum. What would you say about the Nigerian government's failure to adhere to Memorandum of Actions and Memorandum of Understanding?
You see, there's an unimaginable level of deceit that runs our government. They do things not because they mean it, but because they just want to get rid of you for the time. And that should not be the mentality of government. Government runs on trust. Trust is one extremely important factor in governance anywhere in the world. You need to say something and the people believe you for what you have said. But our governance has degenerated to a point where they sign papers not because they mean it, they say things not because they intend to stand by it. The concept of integrity has almost completely eluded us as far as governance is concerned in this country. That is why whenever you want to get into an agreement with government, you just find it very difficult to understand or to know what to think, what to believe, how to get about it. And the only language that really gets government to seemingly wake up or sit up is when you go on strike. And even when you go on strike, the initial body language is like you are an irritant and they can't understand why you would dare to do that until it starts to bite and the citizens start to complain and they start to feel worried that their position might be affected on the long run. All that matters to government and those in power is their position. Anything that threatens them as individuals, either their party or election that is coming or their resources, you see them waking up and jumping up. But in terms of being committed to the essence of government and governance, as clearly stated in the Constitution, they are in for a different ballgame completely. It's like, look, we're not here for this taking care of you. We took care of you at the election. We are here to take care of ourselves and recover whatever we have done. And I think Nigerians need to start to wake up to this new reality and decide who they would want to get into power in future.
All right. To Nicola Wole, sadly,
yes,
over the weekend, we lost the son of a senator, Bala Na'ala. His name, Captain Ibn Na'ala, over the week in Kaduna. Quickly also share your thoughts on that.
You mean the killing of his son?
Yes.
Well, it's a tragedy when people lose their children in the way and manner the senator has lost his son. So my condolence to the senator and then to entire members of his family and to the friends of this boy. I have lost a son before. I lost my first son some 3-4 years ago. And you will not believe it that I haven't gotten over it up to today. So I know what the senator will be feeling. And it is in that respect I really sympathize with him. What this tells us is that no one is longer safe in this country, because I'm aware that most of these high-placed politicians, senators, governors, and what have you, they have securities around their children. But still, times without number, some of them have had their families being hit or being abducted or being killed by these bandits that we have all over the country. It is for the people, not just in the legislature, but the executive arm of court, and including to begin to treat this issue, give it fast. It is now obvious. The arm of government alone position to address this issue. It is now obvious that it is beyond them. And it is for that reason that one will want to say and appeal to the legislature and the judiciary to help the people in the sector of government to sort this out. Nobody is safe again in this country. Generals have been harassed, intimidated, abducted, and kidnapped. Emirs have been kidnapped. School children have been kidnapped. Life and property no longer have meaning in Nigeria. These are all indicators of a failed state. What this is signifying is that Nigeria as a nation has collapsed, that the security architecture that we have on ground today is not working. And to that extent, it won't be too much if the people in the legislative arm of government will do the needful. If the executive, the people in the executive arm of government no longer have the capacity to discharge their responsibility, their primary responsibility to secure lives and property, then the legislators should do the needful. Get rid of that executive arm of government so that we can have people who are in power, who will be alive to their responsibility and who will be able to guarantee the security of lives and property to all our people, all over the country, wherever they may be.
All right. Mr. Ayatok, can you also quickly share your thoughts on that one? Some people have, pointed out certain things that have happened in the last, few years and said, oh, maybe this will be the wake-up call. Now it's affected a, sitting senator. How bad do you think this is?
I think it's actually worse than we report. And the reason is simple. The security and welfare of the people is far from being the priority of the people in government. And that is going against the spirit of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I think that every senator, every assemblyman, once they get into the chambers, they should all recite that section of the Constitution. Chapter 2, Section 14, subsection 2B. It states, the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. When you talk of government, government has three arms. You have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. I can rephrase it and say, the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of the National Assembly. The security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of the National Assembly. When they recite this on a daily basis, my hope is that one day they will come to understand the import, the purport, and the prognosis of that statement. Because what they are doing, they don't seem to know why they are there. The day that our security matters, our priorities will be rearranged. And I call on Nigerians again to think of that passage or that section of the Constitution and think in their leadership recruitment, to play down on collecting money from politicians, to play down on thinking that election time is the time that they benefit from government, and know that you cannot have a little window of one day and then bargain it off against 4 years. It doesn't make sense. Nigerians should wake up. I have actually stopped blaming people in government. I'm actually no longer really interested in doing that again because they got into a contract with us. They paid us in exchange for 4 years for themselves. I think we need to reverse that by talking to ourselves first and think of sending people and not being bargained against to collect, our power for 4 years.
Yeah, but also, Mr.
Yes.
Ayatok, apologies. Pretty much the same thing with the attack on the Nigerian Defense Academy. The government made statements about making sure that the perpetrators are brought to book and some of all of that. We've heard that so many other times here in Nigeria. I'm sure that, there would be a similar statement made here, but there doesn't seem to be actual arrests being made and prosecution for some of these criminals, that are running rogue across the country. So don't you feel like that is one thing that has, maybe let this thing continue?
Their statements, I said before, and I say it again, their statements are things that you just like copy and paste. It's never the thing that comes from their heart. The only statement that comes from their heart, and they mean it, is what affects them directly or indirectly. That's when they come on hard. Maybe you've not taken the part on the Métis Allah and the body language, the stance, the disposition of Mr. President, and you see how he takes certain issues personal. Certain issues are no-go areas. He's willing to bend over backwards. He's willing to use a sledgehammer to kill a fly to get the question is, when will the security and welfare of the man in Ikodepene give Mr. President a sleepless night? When will the life of the Almajiri boy on the street who has no future, no life, make Mr. President to say this is not okay? When will that woman who goes to prayer house in Ikate instead of going to the hospital because she can't afford and the medical facilities are not enough and the doctors are on strike, when will her life be so important to Mr. President that he goes down on all fours, if need be, to say, no, this is not enough? I think that we should be careful the people that we send into office. I could never say this enough. Our leadership recruitment criteria must be looked into again. We've become the poverty capital of the world. We've become one of the three most terrorized nations in the world. We have become one of the top 5 most insecure places in the world. What else do we want before we can wake up? I call on Nigerians to wake up. I call on the complicit, elite to wake up. I call on the so-called professionals like us to wake up and know that this is not okay and start to talk and start to reach out and start to say it is not enough. That is why I will always commend the National Consultative Front for wanting to come and give alternative narrative. I want all Nigerians to wake up. Okay, let's quickly then share one last story, and that is on the Nation this morning. It's talking about Festus Keyamo. It says government unaware of planned power tariff hike. Tunde Kolawole, let's start with you on that one. There were some fears last week when there was supposedly a notice put out asking DISCOs, and this is from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, asking DISCOs to go ahead with a power tariff hike from the 1st of September. Festus Keyamo has said that is, they're not aware of that. And same thing with the EKEDC. Mr. Kolawole, do you think that...
Papers, even before today...
All right, go ahead. Just go ahead.
There was something on the social media in which the people in charge of electricity were said to have issued a notice of a power increase. The journalists went and interviewed the man who signed the notice, only for the man to begin to say that there is no intendment to increase the tariff. And the truth of the matter is that they have always been playing games with us, just like my brother who is running this commentary with me has said. For the people in government, they have no respect for the Nigerian people. All the activities are carried out with impunity. They look us all like they call us a bloody civilian. And as of today, and before now, that they were going to ensure that every home has a prepaid meter. After that, if you have prepaid meter, you can always regulate whatever power that you have called. Have they fulfilled that promises to all of us? The answer is no. All that we've been getting most of the time is promises and promises. Now, the question I want to ask is this. If people have to pay as much as 15,000, 30,000 for power consumption in another, but maybe a mini flat or a room and palace that cost. And these kind of persons are on a monthly salary of which is what they call the minimum wage, which most of the state government are finding difficult to pay. And that those who are on minimum wage, for example, the woman in the village who sells pepper, who sells cola nut, will not be entitled. Is that what we are saying? The truth is that they have sold this power to themselves and people who don't know the nitty-gritty of generating and distributing power. And that is what the Nigerian people are paying for today. Inefficiency in the sector. They thought the power sector would just be like the telecommunication, and which they will give paper and then they will start running in a GSM company and start reaping a bountiful harvest without knowing that it's a more complicated game over there. And rather than hand over or hands off that sector and let those who have the wherewithal to run the power sector efficiently and cheaply, they have refused to do that. The power sectors were sold to former president, former head of state, former army general, chief executives who have no knowledge of engineering or electronic engineering whatsoever.
All right.
Who are paying for today. My appeal once again is the Nigerian people have been too tolerant of their leaders. They allow them get away with too many things. And it is high time we begin to stand up as a people and challenge those who are imposed upon us as a nation.
Okay.
I have lost interest in the Buhari administration. I said this for a long time ago, that this government will merely wumble until we conduct another election in 2003. If anybody is still expecting any good from this government, that person is wasting his time.
All right.
But for the power
Thanks
sector,
a lot,
the Nigerian people that must now rise up and say, no, enough is enough. We don't want to pay any increase or we don't want any rise again in the tariff in that sector. The Nigerian people are already paying enough. Give us prepaid meter first. If every home is having prepaid meter and they can regulate their own power consumption, and we see transparency, then we begin to talk about the increase in tariff. But this idea of saying that that power is done, you begin to wonder. Each time there is a fall in the people in the power sector will also increase their tariff. As if the water that can generate electricity in Kanji Dam is imported.
All
As if
let's bring in Mr.
that
Yaito.
they're using to power some of the plants that are not totally everything is imported. As if the poles, the electric poles and others that are made as if they are imported.
Mr. Kolawole, can you hold on? Mr.
Let me
Yaito, I want you to...
my brother Kolawole because he laid
Mr. Yaito, I want you to also add this, one of the stories on the Punch this morning. It says, government implements cooking gas imports tax, price jumps by 100%. So it's not, just past, electricity tariffs, that we're talking about increase now. Also, cooking gas. Even if, just to quickly also mention that the EKEDC and Festus Keyamo have both denied that there will be any increment. But go ahead.
The first thing is that, for goodness sake, why can't we run governance that makes sense? Keyamo, to the best of my knowledge, is Minister of State for Labor. There is Power Minister, and then Labor Minister is talking on power on behalf of power. It just doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. What's really wrong with this administration? The doctors strike. I expect that my brother, the Keyamo, will be concentrating on the strike. Why is it jumping into power? I don't understand. Don't we have a minister of power? Anyway, it's like the stock in trade of this administration. Anybody, the CBN can go into, the Ministry of Finance issues, and Ministry of Finance can go into housing, and it's just muddled up. And what do you expect? At the end of the day, we have a system that really doesn't understand that government is so important, that next after God is government, is the next most important institution. And there's something called quackery in professionalism. Do we have quacks in power? And if we have quacks in power, why should Nigerians expect anything better? I think that God will help us to manage till 2023, but that the beginning of our rescue should be on our psyche, our mentality, our resolve to ensure that we will get the right pilot to pilot aircraft and not engineers, and that we will get architects to design our houses and not draftsmen. We will get doctors to do their jobs and not, other paramedical staff or things like that. Each of them have their role. Let everybody play their role in their assigned and their professional areas so that we can have a system that works, so that we can have a governance that is focused. I think that all these things is because we are getting the wrong people into the places of work, and the answer cannot be anything different from the confusion that we are having now.
Well, how strenuous would this be for Nigerians if there's going to be an increment in some of all these things? A lot of Nigerians already can't or are struggling to afford electricity and cooking gas.
It's, brother, when you prioritize your people, you will know the things to subsidize. You will know where to subsidize it. You know how to subsidize it when you prioritize the welfare of your people. But when it is about how you can make money, your contract, you are looking at the bottom line to you as an individual. Selfishness, you are selfish, you are self-centered, you are inconsiderate. We will continue to have policies that bite on the poor that are already dead. That's why we have taxes, tax them more, tax them more, tax them more. Get is like pulling and not giving back. And we don't even understand that the cow that is fatted gives you more milk. The cow that is lean have less milk. Wisdom demands fatten the cow and get more milk. That's just right thinking. But the government says, no, forget about fattening the cow. Just keep pulling. Even when nothing is coming out, they're not even wise enough to understand that nothing is coming out. The people are suffering. The people are suffering. The people are suffering. And government doesn't even know about it. And they're just like, so I think that the people need to wake up and look at our leadership recruitment profiling criteria. And that's going to be the beginning. Outside of that, all these commentaries that we're running, next year we'll come here and run the same commentary, and unless we wake up. But
we have about 2 years. Nigeria has about 2 years to, fix that leadership recruitment process and, hopefully make better decisions in 2023. But thanks very much, Ezekiel Nyaitok, for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you. And of course, Tunde Kolawole, thank you also for joining us this morning. We wish you a great week ahead.
Mount Hat.
All right, that's it for Off the Presses, where we have a quick review of stories making headlines across the country every morning. Stay with us. We'll go back in history to tell you certain things that happened on this day, the 30th of August, a couple of years ago, here on The Breakfast.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the barbing, I pay my rent. On the barbing, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
for me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
Contrary to popular belief, Corona is not a hoax. The virus is real. Be responsible. Wear a mask. Wash your hands with soap and water and avoid crowded places. Maintain physical distancing. Be responsible. Together, we can overcome the pandemic.
Politics has helped shape the decision of the polity, from conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned comic politics.
These are the result of tomorrow's election. Okay, you have it already.
I am not hungry. If I need appointment, all I need to do is to start praising government.
Plus, politics will fill the polls of the country, from friends to frenemies, even strange bedfellows, to clones and stooges. We go beyond the rhetorics and the drama to analyze the story behind the story.
Let anybody come and say. The moment we stop having charlatans occupy political offices, we will curtail hate speech.
Plus Politics, not just another political show. It's about putting you, the citizens, in the know.
Welcome once again to The Breakfast here on Plus TV Africa. Now let's go back in history just a little bit to the year 2014 and share with you what happened on this day, the 30th of August. On this day, of course, it was in the deep of Lesotho's political crisis, and the Prime Minister back then, Tom Thabane, fled to South Africa as, of course, the army allegedly had carried out a coup or staged a coup. On the 30th of August, he alleged that a coup had been launched against him, and this followed previous allegations which caused him to suspend Parliament over possible extra-constitutional maneuvers. It also followed pressure from South Africa to maintain the democratic process. Tabane said he fled to South Africa amid fear for his life. And of course, in the incident, it was reported that a policeman was killed. The very next day, Metsing assumed responsibility for running government, while Lesotho police opened an investigation into 2 of his employees over treason and murder for being allegedly complicit in working with the military. And that was this day in 2014, the 30th of August. Pretty interesting there. And of course, also seeing how that eventually turned out and where South Africa currently is. Also in history on this day, let's move to another African country. And of course, this one, a very popular name in Uganda, Bobi Wine. Popular mostly because of his music and then his political journey. He's one person that I believe has been arrested the most times of all, political, everybody who has been anti-government and opposition party members. Bobi Wine, I believe, has been arrested the most in African history. He was on this day also violently arrested after being freed on bail. He was rearrested for attempting to leave the country. Ugandan police violently blocked him from traveling outside the country while he was on his way to seek medical treatment in the United States. He was also then prevented from boarding the flight. He was first arrested on the 15th of August after rioting broke out between rival parties ahead of a local parliamentary election. He has been in and out of court. Even last year, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, if you remember, there were also reports of him being arrested multiple times, sometimes also with tear gas being sprayed on him and his followers. And this has been the political journey of Bobi Wine. He contested the election and lost also last year, but has continued with the struggle to free the Ugandan people and, of course, represent them in office as president. He has a very, very interesting political history, a political story, and hopefully, let's see how it turns out. He might just win it someday. But on this day, on the 30th of August in 2018, he was arrested after being freed on bail while trying to leave Uganda to the United States for medical treatment. Stay with us here. We're going into our first major conversation for today. The Nigerian Medical Association has given the federal government 21 days to address the issues of the National Association of Resident Doctors, or else they will maybe also join the strike. We're going to be joined by the Secretary General of the Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Phillips Ikbe, who's joining us now. Good morning, Doc. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, so it's a 21-day ultimatum. Quickly tell us about that and why the NMA has taken this stance.
Well, as you know, the Nigerian Medical Association is the umbrella body of all the doctors in this country, and we operate with affiliates. Affiliate means that different bodies. The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, NAD, is part of the affiliates of the Nigerian Medical Association. And you are aware that before now, they've been negotiating with the government. They've had a memorandum of understanding. They have a memorandum of action. Unfortunately, government have not met up these demands. Even the ones they managed to meet up, they did that haphazardly. As such, and in all these negotiations, Nigerian Medical Association send representatives, send observer, go with them. I particularly have been going with them, and the government did not close its eyes while it was signing these agreements, this memorandum of action. And they usually put timeline when they discuss that, okay, after so time, this is what will be done. But I'm telling you, since almost the beginning of this year, more than 4 or 5 months now, we should not be here. And so looking at it properly, I think the action of NAD is legitimate.
Okay.
And because of that, we discussed it in our National Executive Council meeting and realized that it is time probably to give the backing to NAD. That look, government, you need to sit up. If you realize the healthcare system in the country is currently in shambles, because NAD is a very vital part of the system, of the healthcare system. If NAD is not working, especially in public institutions, it's the functioning capacity of those public institutions will be less than 30%. And the Nigerian people are suffering because they need to be treated. They need to take care of their health. As such, NMA, feel that, look, let us put our weight behind NAD in this issue. Probably that will help government or make government to sit up and fulfill the demands of NAD. Thank you.
All right, you said that you had joined in the negotiations over time. So can you share with us, what that conversation really is like every time that the doctors meet with the federal government? What vibe do you get from those discussions, that has eventually led to failure to adhere to their promises?
Well, the truth is that government appear to be honest, and there is usually cordial discussion to say what can be done and what cannot be done. And at the end of the day, they come to an agreement. The major issue, and maybe they will begin to try to implement, but immediately not calls off their strike, government will relax, and nothing is happening again. And that is why till today, you will have it that up to now, some doctors are working and they've not been paid. Some doctors worked for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and they've not been paid. And so many other issues.
The agreements and, of course, the demands by NARD, what would your response be to people who say that they're probably asking for too much and right now the Nigerian government is pretty tight on funds and cannot necessarily release that amount of money? Would that explanation make sense to you?
Nigerian government have not said that they are tight for money, therefore they cannot meet up with demand. No. They even said they have the money and they can meet up the demands. Especially, let's look at the Medical Residency Training Fund. The other ones, the salaries of those workers is already in the budget and that's supposed to be paid. So I don't think there's no time that the Nigerian government said, look, we don't have enough money. Remember that there's COVID-19 allowance that they were supposed to pay. They told NAD, they told NMA, we don't have enough money. Let us discuss how to improve the general hazard allowance in the salary structure. And NAD and government and the NMA agreed. So it's not about NAD or NMA being very difficult or saying that they don't have the money. No. We are working together. We all agreed with government. They knew what they have before they reached those agreements. They made phone calls. They reached out to people, and they all agree that this is possible. And so why are you not doing it? I also believe that government has to put its act together. There are problems with bottleneck and logistics. I mean, you see that now, the Minister of Labour and NAD have agreed on certain issues. Then by the time it comes to implementation, either by one model or the other, it's not been done. And it's taking too long. I mean, it's not like NAD finished this negotiation and go to sit down. NAD follows it up to see what is going on. And they see that eventually there's stumbling block, especially from the, I think there's a stumbling block majorly sometimes from the head of service. That is the head of civil service of the Federation Department. So those are the issues.
Okay, and are there things, seeing where we currently stand with this, are there things that the federal government, or you would expect that the federal government will be able to suggest that they can immediately implement? It may not be the whole spectrum of demands from the NARD, but are there things that they maybe can start with, that might make the NARD and the NMA, decide, okay, let's handle or, manage what, the government is offering for now, and we can negotiate further?
Nigerian resident doctors and NMA is very reasonable. We know the one that takes a whole lot of processes, and we know the ones that shouldn't take processes. You understand? And that is why sometimes, from time to time, we review it. For instance, the Medical Residency Training Fund should be paid. Those doctors who were being paid on GIFMIs that were supposed to be migrated to what they call IPs, they should be paid. And those remaining house officers, about 114 of them, that have several issues, they should be paid. And of course, they should begin to also show commitment in the shortfall of 2014, 2015, and 2016. And then the circular for house officers. I mean, that one is the most obnoxious part of it, because it's like everybody's doing well. It just went down, brought up a circular that is going to that did upset the system. So I think if they are able to do these things I mentioned, NMA should be able to prevail on that and say, look, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this. I mean, let us, because Nigerians are suffering, let's go back to work. But as I'm telling you, all these things that I mentioned have not been done.
All right, well...
Although they claim to be working on it, but how long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? We need to see evidence of commitment. You know, this is not the first time government have been reneging on the agreement, and that is why now there is no trust. Even if, as I am, even if they tell me they're going to pay tomorrow, I won't believe it until I see it. If they tell me they're paying on Wednesday, I won't believe it until I see it. Now, look at it. This strike has been going on for 21 days, and it's not like there are new agreements. This agreement have been signed a long time ago, over 2 months, 3 months. So that means that if now that Colombia strike, probably on the 2nd, on the 3rd, on the 4th, up till now, they wouldn't have been able to even fulfill those agreements. They can understand my logic. You understand? You know, this is 2020. Today is what? Today is
30th already.
Today is 30th. So this is 4 weeks. And those demands, which, remember, NAT strike started on the 2nd, right? So those demands by now should have been, maybe before even 15th, they should have fulfilled those demands. But unfortunately, even the federal government have not also lived up to its expectation. Always, all the time, you go back to the negotiating table. No matter the situation, whether you are in court, whether there is anything, you try to find a way. But, they're not doing enough.
All right, I want you to also share from a doctor's perspective, what does it feel like working for months, on end without getting paid?
It is really very terrible. I particularly, if I am to work in any establishment and within 3-4 months I'm not paid, I don't see the reason why I should remain there. But unfortunately, the situation is such that they are in training. They can't walk away. Do you understand? If they could, they will. I'm somehow beginning to walk away. You can see what happened with the interview to Saudi Arabia. They all trooped there, and they're going to take them. And we're going to lose doctors, our hard-earned doctors. It's very, very painful. Many of these doctors can't even pay school fees for their children. They can't even pay their house rent anymore. It's a bad situation for them. At the same time, they are humane. They know that Nigerians are suffering. They wish they can go back to work. They are even appealing to government. That is why, they also reach out to NMA. Say, please appeal to government for us as an umbrella body. They're also reaching out to who is in Nigeria. They're reaching out to the different departments, different ministers, and they're reaching out to House of National Assembly, the Speaker. They're reaching out to the head of service now, Secretary to the Government Federation. That look, this is an emergency situation. It's time to intervene. People are dying. You can imagine your security man whose wife is pregnant, and now there is fetal distress or there's a problem and she needs a cesarean section. It is only government hospital that they can afford, and now she gets there, things cannot be done. That is the truth.
All right, and I also want you to talk about I think sometime last week there was news of a court ruling asking the doctors to go back to strike. What's your response to that, and will that be enough to take the doctors back to work?
I'm not aware that there is a court ruling asking doctors to go back to call off the strike. What I know is that the court ruling adjourned till 15th of September, and and the court stated they have to hear from the doctors. It's not just hearing from the government; they have to hear from the doctors so that the justice will be served. And that means they gave an ample, latitude for government to renegotiate. So that, by the time you get back to industrial court, these issues will have been resolved. And it's impossible because the court adjourned to 15th of September. And so it should be possible. Government should be able to sit down with NMA, negotiate with NMA, and NAT, and then fulfill NAT demands, at least such that they will call off the strike. Nigerians are suffering. I don't know if they understand the burden of what is going on. For those who are negotiating, for some of us, the doctors, we can take care of ourselves, not a problem. But we're talking about Nigerians, the population, the Nigerian people, not the elites. We're talking about people who go to the hospital daily, Nigerian women. Maternal mortality is going to increase, even with this action. Government have to be sensitive.
You mentioned Saudi. I'm going to, also bring in other angles on the, state level. But you mentioned Saudi, and it's some other thing. It's one thing that also made headlines sometime last week. Doctors immigrating to Saudi Arabia. Share with us, why that is happening, and what the working conditions, seem like from people that you might know in Saudi Arabia. A lot more Nigerian doctors looking at the option of leaving.
Well, Well, let's look at it this way. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the health indices in the world and where Nigeria stands. And out of about 191 countries, Nigeria is ranking 187. That is to let you know that our healthcare system is abysmal, not in human resources, but in facilities and a working environment and circumstances for welfare. The doctor is poorly paid. They don't have enough facilities to work. I mean, government, like what is going on now with the strike, with the NAT strike, government is not living up to expectation. And of course, the economy is so bad that, even surviving is a problem. Then there are a lot of doctors who are also roaming the street of Nigeria. These needed doctors that government needs to employ, get them employed, but they're not being employed. So that is why they're leaving. And they're leaving to places where the conditions are better. For any doctor that leaves Nigeria to Saudi Arabia, his salary is going to increase by about 10 to 20 times. So you understand that. That is over 1,000 to 2,000% increase. With that, even these salaries are not taxed, and they're not taxed, especially for Saudi Arabia. They're given accommodation, they pay for their vacation, and they're working in a decent environment. Not just that, the pressure on them will be reduced. Here in Nigeria, the doctor to patient ratio is about 1 doctor to 6,000 patients. And that is why that you see that a patient comes in the morning around 8 o'clock, you may not see a doctor till around 4, unless there is an emergency that will now begin to try to assist that patient. These are not very good conditions to work. And so it's the reason why they're all trooping down to Saudi Arabia. Of course, they'll be lonely there, but the doctors are, I can see they're nationalistic, they're patriotic, they want to be in their country and work. And that is why I see that NAD is look at these are the problems. This is why people are leaving. Solve these things and let us, so that people will not leave. But government is not showing good enough commitment, because this is months now and they've not fulfilled the demands of NAD or the negotiation that they signed with NAD, the memorandum of action. So that is it.
Dr. Ekpe, would you encourage a doctor in Nigeria to leave?
Well, nobody's happy. At the level I am as Secretary General of the Nigerian Medical Association, it's not just about the welfare of the doctors, but also about Nigerians. Even if I leave, who is going to treat my mother? Who's going to treat my sister? So it's not like we're encouraging them. But you see, the environment is hostile. It's not good enough, you understand? So that's why we are in this impasse. That's why we are discussing. That's why we're showing this action for government to realize, because it seems they're not even aware. I imagine a situation where you think that, doctors are surplus. Don't get me wrong. At any time, there will always be migration, you understand? Just like as it is in other fields. After all, sometimes that also people migrate to Nigeria to go and give services. But this time around, it's in droves. You remember that the interview at Sheraton Hotel, over 500 doctors. Do you know what that means? Do you know what it means for Nigeria to lose me to another country? I'm a chief consultant of sexual gynecologist. I know the lives I've saved. Even in the night, 1 a.m., I drive down to go and do some kind of surgery to save life, and they are letting me go. That means you don't have value for me. And I'm not holding you to the jugular. I discussed with you, and I've told you that this is, we agree that really these issues are very important. Government have not said that demand of NAD is illegitimate or illegal. No, they agree. They ensure in our discussion, they own up to it. And sometimes you also see them angry with the people in between. The people who are supposed to make sure that the processes are done fast for it to be done, So it's not an issue of NAD is high-handed or NMA is high-handed. It's not an issue of their demand is not legitimate. It's an issue that government is not living up to their expectation because of bottlenecks.
All right. Let's now talk about, the other levels of this whole story, and that is from the chief medical directors to the state level also. What would you want, to be done on that level to make the working conditions for doctors better?
Well, first of all, Nigeria should increase its budget for health. The WHO recommendation is saying 15%. The highest Nigeria has gone is 6%. For this year, it's even 4%. And even at that 4%, it is not totally implemented. If you go to our hospitals, you see that even we don't have enough bed space. The work is so much. They're not even employing enough. You can imagine that, as these doctors are leaving, what is going to happen to all the patients? You see a doctor, I mean, I was interacting with a friend who is currently in Saudi. He sees just 4 to 5 patients in a day, and he takes his time. But here, a Nigerian doctor may have to see up to 50 patients in a day. Even at that, he will be exhausted. And Nigerian doctors are very good at doing their best. And then you find out that at one time or the other, there's no equipment that is working enough for them to work with. The facilities are not okay. And then you now add the poor remuneration to it and not meeting up this demand. This demand is not just about salary. It's also about research. It's also about improving the place. So the CMDs also have to do their part, but they are doing their part, but also they need government support because the CMD, they don't act on their own.
All right. What happens after 21 days, Dr. Philip Zekbe?
Yes, by 21 days, the National Executive Council of the Nigerian Medical Association will meet and take a decision.
Right. Is there any insights as to what that decision might be? Will the NMA go on its own, strike?
I would like to calm down more on, like, NMA is optimistic that we are still going to meet the government, we are going to discuss with them, because it's not about whether strike or no strike or dropping tools or no dropping tools. We don't want to get there. We want the demand of NAD to be fulfilled, and that is why we are pushing. Even as of yesterday, if you look at my eyes very well, I've not really slept, either because of one meeting or the other, trying to make sure to put pressure that, look, get this thing done. And 21 days is a long time. If government will say, oh, in a week's time, this and this will be happening, then I believe that we may not really get to that 21 days. So I think we shouldn't even be discussing 21 days. We should be discussing how to fulfill that demand. I'm telling you, even on I think it's Saturday in the night, there were meetings of different persons in government functionaries. But I think that government have to break some protocols. You understand? It's an emergency situation. They shouldn't wait. They shouldn't be the normal file movement from Ministry of Health to Head of Service to budget to IPs and back to Attorney General to Finance and back on the rest of them. Or even if they have to do that, it should be brisk, there should be brevity, so that we pass the stage.
One of the things that has been mentioned over time is the hazard allowance for doctors, which they have, asked that it should be improved on. Can you share with us, what type of hazards doctors have to deal with at their workplace every day?
So it is very, very many. Let's just give an example when this COVID-19 pandemic was at its peak. While people were isolating at home, doctors were there at the forefront working, exposing themselves. We lost quite some doctors. Even now we tell you, we lost quite some doctors. I can tell you there are some people that I know that I cried today that we lost. Quite a lot of them, personal friends. So that is one major hazard. With this, because there's pandemic, I get to know it. How about tuberculosis? How about hepatitis B? How many about HIV? There's so many hazards that doctors go through. How about accident on the road? I told you just now that sometimes 1 a.m. they have to call me. There was one day I was driving back from the National Hospital. I missed the road. You understand? There was no light on the road. There was no light. And when you're getting to a place called Abacha Barracks, the road, there's a way it divides. I almost ran into the bush. So these are hazards. You understand? These are serious hazards that they go through. You're operating on HIV patient. The doctor would not say no, because patient is HIV positive. I will not operate. They operate, and sometimes we prick ourselves. Despite the fact that we try to, take the precautions. What does hepatitis B? That eventually causes cancer of the liver. These things have, a lot of hazard that we go through. You are discussing with the patient is coughing, and all the rest of them. Pneumonia can be transmitted. These are all the hazard they go through. But while you are in the office, while you are sitting at home, you're not going to go through all that hazard. So doctor is like in the war front, trying to make sure that the health of Nigerians are good. At the same time, risking their own life, risking their own health. Because, it's like the military man that is defending the country. He may die too. So that is what, and many of the doctors have died. Some have even had to commit suicide because of pressure, because of depression, because of this, this system.
One thing that has been mentioned a few times by critics, for the NARD and the NMA, is that a lot of doctors have their own private practice, that keeps them going. And, it maybe, it's a thing of greed. That's what makes them continue to make these demands. Would you have something to say to that?
Thank you very much. Let me put it this way. If government is living up to its expectation, I don't think many doctors want to go into private practice. Because let's look at Abuja. I live in Abuja. If you depend on salary alone with what government is paying, it's difficult. You may not be able to pay your rent, you may not be able to, the cost of living. So it is part-time work they're doing. You close around 5, you're not on call. You go to work elsewhere just to make ends meet. It's not like, they have CMDs and they're there, they're watching us. We work. So it is unfortunate that they're bringing up that issue that doctors are being greedy. No, it is the private sector that actually treats about 70% of Nigerians. It's just that the private sectors are not so developed because the environment is hostile. The economy is bad. Where $1 is about 500 naira. You can imagine what it would cost to buy equipment from outside, and that's why government have to, be up and about particularly I mentioned about 4 areas. Number 1 is health and health again. Number 2 is security. Security is also important. That is one of the ones I did not mention. It's one of the reasons too why some persons, quite a lot of our healthcare workers are leaving the country. The security challenge is just too much. It's just much, we know doctors have been killed and we also know doctors whose wives have been killed. If that should happen to you, would you want to stay? For instance, now Nigerians are no longer, they're hardly traveling by road now. People are now forcefully traveling via air, even when they cannot afford it because of insecurity. People are just drive from here to Kaduna, either you're kidnapped or you're killed or something is going on. So this issue of not feeling safe is also one of the reasons they are leaving. But going back to your question, I don't think doctors are greedy. Even the private hospitals, how much is he really paying that when they look at it because of private hospital? No. It's government hospital should just, is what the doctors working there. How many of them are actually working in the private hospital? They only do part-time. I assure you, they only do part-time. They're always there at work. Go to National Hospital if without this strike, you see the doctors at their workplaces. Go to the University of Lagos Hospital, go to Lasut. You see them working. We have sent patients there and you see them working. So I don't think it is true that because the issue is about private practice. In short, the doctors in government are augmenting the private practice because government doesn't even have enough facility to even handle the Nigerian patient. They don't. That sometimes a patient comes to maybe an hospital, you find out the bed is full. You refer to another hospital, the bed is full. Refer to another hospital, the bed is full. You end up landing in the private hospital that is not even affordable. Government have to be serious on health insurance. It should be mandatory. The only about less than 5% of Nigerians, even who are in government are even covered. You understand? In a population of 200 million persons. Look, that is the way to go. Health insurance. With health insurance, there will be adequate.
All right, Secretary General, Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Phillips Ekpe, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for speaking with us. We wish you a great Monday ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, from challenges in the health sector, we'll move to challenges in the power sector. We're going to be speaking next on the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission and, of course, its supposed message to increase electricity tariffs from the 1st of September. That comes up next after this short break.
we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
He suffered equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am. If you no talk, dem go beat you. Na 2,500 they pay.
For upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
For me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, excel. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Niger, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
This is it for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Na 2,500 they pay.
Welcome once again to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Our next conversation is going to be on the electricity tariff news. Sometime last week, there were reports of a possible increase in the electricity tariff from the 1st of September. But the EKEDC and its spokesperson have come out to state that that might be false. And also in the news this morning, Festus Kayamo had stated that the government is not aware of any planned increment. We're speaking with Professor Kenneth Wike. He's a political analyst and professor of politics and governance at the Ignatius Adjuru University of Education. Good morning, Professor Ken. All right, I hope you can hear us clearly. We're also speaking with Daga Tola from he's a spokesman, Movement of Socialist Alternatives. Good morning, Mr. Tola.
Yeah, good morning, Africa, Plus Africa, and good morning, all Nigerians.
Thanks for joining us. We hope we can get better sound quality from Professor Kenneth. But let's start with Daga Tola. There's, of course, a lot of Nigerians were worried last week. We've, complained, or Nigerians have complained about the high cost of living. And of course, continued increment in electricity tariff. So let me start with your thoughts. Do you think that these things are inevitable, seeing the way that the country is currently moving? And, would Nigerians need to always pay higher to get better electricity?
Let me make it quite clear that I do not agree with that narrative. I don't think that increase in the pump price of fuel, increase in the pump price of electricity, or new increase in tariff in electricity will resolve any of the contradictions plaguing these key sectors. Interestingly, it's extremely very painful that the ruling class in this part of the world is not even learning any lessons from its own history and from the fact that all of these policies, since they've been implemented all through these decades, have not resolved any of the contradictions. The history of the increase of pump price of fuel, for an example, didn't just start now. Interestingly, the Buhari regime, when it first came into power in 1984 to 1985, didn't follow these paths. All of the increases we have had through the austerity measure of the Shehu Shagari regime, through to the structural adjustment program of the Babangida regime, and now to the policy of deregulations and privatizations, which are the policies dictating all of these programs by the ruling elite, has not in any way provided any increase for regular electricity for Nigerians. Interestingly, according to the World Bank, statistics from the World Bank, Nigeria is still ranked 171 in a count of 190 countries. Access to electricity in Nigeria is still largely restricted to the urban areas. In a access of a country of 200 million plus, only 85 million Nigerians have access to electricity. So the fact speaks otherwise in relation to these policies and programs. This singular narrative that there is no alternative to capitalism, where the resources of society, the resources of this country can be muzzled, can be employed to serve as the basis to develop the economy, to provide electricity, to drive power, to drive energy, to drive steel production, to drive the basis for industrialization of this country, then the ruling elites, on the basis of their own doctrines and philosophy, will practically have no other choice than to continue with this destructive policy of further destroying the Nigerian economy more further.
All right. Professor Kenneth Wike, welcome once again. Professor Wake, can you hear us? If you can you unmute your device so we can get sound from you? All right, while we wait.
I can hear you.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us once again. I want you to share your thoughts on the investment in electricity. Sometime in February 2021, there was the World Bank statement that they were assisting Nigeria with $500 million. We've also heard about the Siemens, loan, and Siemens, about $3 billion also, assistance to the Nigerian government with regards, electricity also. But this year, and in the last long while, we've had a few times than normal where the power grid collapses. Why do you think we still aren't getting it right with fixing Nigeria's electricity or power sector challenges?
Yeah, thank you. I get worried, especially when you talked about the Siemens contract, because that was one of the visits that our former chief of staff, Abba Kyari, traveled to Germany. And so when you talk about Siemens contract, talk about electricity and all that, then that reminds me of that untimely death of our chief of staff, because Nigeria needed power at all costs from, I think that necessitated that visit and all that. So it clearly shows that Nigeria, the investments in the power sector in Nigeria have been very, very slow, in yielding the desired dividends. I know how much that was sunk into the power sector during the Obasanjo administration in Nigeria, between 1999 and 2007. And then subsequently, a lot of investments have been made in the power sector in Nigeria, even given what we are also raising now. But power has been very, very epileptic in Nigeria. And then the issue of tariff is not about increasing the tariffs that is the problem. Nigerians are tired about these investments that are yielding little or no, dividends. By now, we should be talking about having 24-hour, electricity supply in Nigeria, given the enormity of the funds, sunk into the power sector. And and I know that the Siemens contract was going to last up until 2024 or so, but this is 2022, and I believe that if that contract is still in place and that the government is very, very serious about that contract, we should be getting updates regarding what the Siemens is doing, and then what the funds that are coming from the World Bank, in order to assist Nigeria, get out of the woods. But I think that irrespective of whatever funds that are being deployed into the power sector, if there is no political will on the part of the executive, including the legislature, who does oversight on the power sector. Then Nigerians themselves, who should be doing what they should be.
We of course have had, the country has made its moves to fix the power sector. Privatization was one of them. We now have distribution companies privately run. Why would you say that this might still not be working? And also, we've not still, over time, been able to generate as much as 10,000 megawatts of electricity for a country of 200 million people. Is that in any way embarrassing, that we still are having these lapses? The power grid still collapses every, 4 market days, and yet we're talking about increment in tariff.
I'm extremely excited when you pose this manner of question, because what we are confronting here is the contradiction in the capitalist system itself. Because what is privatization? What is capitalism? It is run singularly for the purpose of making profit. And painfully for all of us, 80 to 90% of all of the entire resources that has been invested in electricity in Nigeria are public funds. But like Prof has pointed out, the ruling elites lack the appropriate, philosophical framework of the necessary goodwill with which to ensure that the private sector, with which to ensure that the electricity sector and indeed all sectors of the economy functions appropriately. More loans, additional loans have been procured. And you ask yourself, if we are running a private electricity managed economy, what is the business of the state employing the entirety of all of its trust and its resources to invest in electricity, and yet it lacks the moral will to protect that investment and ensure that the necessary electricity is provided. And this is why we will continue to say that there is no sector of the Nigerian economy that is not plagued with crisis. And none of these issues can be resolved in isolation of a comprehensive interlinked of all sectors of the economy. Electricity needs to be developed, energy needs to be developed, the means of production, industrialization needs to take place, steel production needs to take place. And none of these key vital sectors can be run effectively and efficiently without putting profit first by the private sector. And the moment profit is placed first and foremost, it becomes a defeatist logic that ensures that it will not function effectively to allow the mass of the working people to access all of these basic needs that are essential for economic development, for the entirety of the mass of the people in the Nigerian society.
Professor Nweke, I'm going back to you now. We continue to have a problem, and one of the things that I read up yesterday was that regulation and funding are two major issues with regulation, infrastructure, and funding were two major issues with Nigeria's electricity sector. Quickly, let me know what you think about how the NERC can better regulate the sector and how we maybe can redirect the funding for electricity so we can achieve better results.
The National Electricity Regulatory Agency, for me, has not done well, because it behoves that it has that responsibility, to give Nigeria, to do everything possible, because as a regulatory authority, to ensure that power. And so what you hear every other time, the average man on the street, is when you hear of the regulatory authority, you are talking about increase in tariff. That's what they are known. Either they are giving a nod to it or they are not giving a nod to it. We are not interested as Nigerians about the tariff. For the average Nigerian, what we will need is to see, if you were showing me a pictorial evidence of power running, right, in a bulb, with a bulb, through the bulb, and all that. So we should have that 24 hours, for goodness sake. I can still remember as far back as 2009, when I made the first trip to Togo, in Olome. There was light, 24 hours in 2009. Throughout 1 week, I stayed in Lome. I didn't see light, the power blink for 1 second and all that in 2009. And then we are still talking about that 11 years or more down the ladder, that we are still struggling with electricity. The best rate we are having today is 10 hours
within 10 hours out of 24 hours and all that. That's the best. And that we are celebrating so much. And so the National Electricity Regulatory Agency ought to sit up. It's not the issue of increasing tariffs that matters. Nigerians are sick and tired of increasing the tariff. What we want to see is power. We want to see power. We want to see, a reflection of the enormity. Oh, you are still bringing this box that is showing that is not, you are showing me this pictorial evidence of 24-hour, power in Nigeria that does not, does not take us to anywhere. See, for me, the National Electricity Regulatory Agency ought to sit up, and then ensure that the funding in the power sector is, guaranteed. The regulation or regulatory practices or policies in the power sector, make it possible for private investors to take up the challenge of ensuring that power is deployed to Nigeria. It is not sitting down there and telling us whether tariff will happen in September or it will happen in 2022. And then even the National Assembly will come up to say, oh, no, slow down on the charge of tariff and all that. Yes, I know that they have a responsibility in terms of oversight. But the National Assembly has every responsibility because that is the arm of government that is, charged with responsibility of oversighting what the executive is doing in this regard. It is not about stopping them or not stopping them. It's about sitting down with these guys and saying, how do you, deploy your policies towards ensuring that, power sector attracts more funding, and that is not just attracting more funding, but to ensure that the infrastructure that is adequate for guaranteeing 24-hour power supply is, in place in Nigeria. And then that your policies, should not be anti-investors and all that, a private investor. And so by so doing, you will see a lot of people coming to look at the telecommunication today. You see how it's soaring everywhere. So why can't we, look at the magic that we did or performed in the telecommunication sector and apply same to the power sector? If you come, for instance, to River State where I stay, in Port Harcourt, you can privatize, a whole lot of Port Harcourt or some, local government and all that. Let the private individuals take the responsibility of distributing this power, and they will let us know who they are and all that. Not given one company, they say it's the distribution company. The other one is the power generating and all that. That is to the extent that Nigerians know. But if you privatize, the power sector in such a way that, a lot of investors will come in and then different locations, different organizations and all that. These competitions will come in. And so deregulate, the power sector in such a way that we have in the telecommunication sector, including the deregulation you are talking about in the petroleum industry. That is the sure way of guaranteeing 24-hour power supply in Nigeria, and not the way we are going, this way. And then I've said severally that it takes the political will on the part of the executive arm of government, to ensure that this thing called 24-hour power supply. In fact, Nigerians are not even looking for 24 hours. We are even looking for just 18 hours active. That will be okay for us as Nigerians that we are, because power sector drives the other sectors, of the economy.
Absolutely. Professor Kenneth Wike is a political analyst and professor of politics and governance at the Ignatius Ajuru University of Education. We also spoke with Daga Tola, spokesman, Movement for Socialist Alternative. Thank you both for being with us this Monday morning, and always looking forward to having conversations with you. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where we will be wrapping up the breakfast this morning. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you missed out on any of these conversations, you know where to find us. It's pretty simple, at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa. See you tomorrow.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges. The growing youth population with little engagement, that is a ticking time bomb. We are a blessed people with diverse culture and highly cerebral minds who have a lot to say. And yes, we are talking. It is important we drive the right conversation that informs, inspires, influences thoughts and action. If we say there's beauty in our diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture. We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation as we are the hope for the future. Yesterday's conversations shape today. What are you saying to shape your tomorrow? We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you.
Contrary to popular belief, corona is not a hoax. The virus is real. Be responsible. Wear a mask. Wash your hands with soap and water and avoid crowded places. Maintain physical distancing. Be responsible. Together, we can overcome the pandemic.
This Medan has been directed to empower 1,000 persons with disabilities in each state in the next 12 months.
When I start hearing the shoot of guns.
Every public policy has winners and losers, and some will not be very happy with you, while others, usually the silent majority, will be quite happy.
Is it for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria?
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Bookie November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
Many thanks for joining us in Plus News Brief. I am Justin Akadonia. Let me begin with health matters. Striking resident doctors have a renewed support in the Nigerian Medical Association, the NMA. The major doctors association in Nigeria has publicly voiced its support for the nationwide strike embarked on by the National Association of Resident Doctors. And the NMA has, in addition, asked the federal government to resolve all pending issues with the resident doctors within 21 days. The NMA released a statement to that effect after its executive arm held a National Executive Council meeting which ended on Saturday in Benin City. The statement was jointly signed by its president, Professor Innocent Uja, and Secretary General Dr. Phillips Igbe. Meanwhile, the federal government has expressed concern about the 21-day strike notice issued by the Nigerian Medical Association over the alleged failure of the government to meet the demand of the striking resident doctors. Minister of Health Osage Ehanirewa, responding to an inquiry by one of our correspondents on the threat by the enemy, said doctors should stop embarking on strikes at dangerous times and appealed to the resident doctors to call off the strike. Ehanire said these as the federal government and the NMA disagreed on the 21-day ultimatum issued by the umbrella body of the medical doctors in the country. The NMA, in a statement on Saturday after its National Executive Council meeting in Edo State, said its affiliate, including the Medical and Dental Consultants of Nigeria, the Medical and Dental Doctors in Academics, and the National Association of Resident Doctors, had resolved to commence a nationwide strike after the ultimatum. The Ministry of Labour and Employment has rejected the 21-day ultimatum given the federal government by the Nigerian Medical Association, saying it is a direct collision with the Memorandum of Understanding signed on August the 21st. The NMA had threatened to join the ongoing strike by the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors if the government failed to resolve all the issues contained in the various agreements signed with its affiliates nationwide. But reacting on Sunday evening, the government argued that the NMA's position was at variance with the timeline stated in the Memorandum of Agreement. This ultimatum was part of the resolutions reached during its NEC meeting held in Benin City last week. Away from all of that, now to security matters. President Muhammadu Buhari has assured Nigerians that his administration is on top of events and is moving ahead with force to crush the perpetrators of the recent incident of arrest in Plateau State. The president gave the assurance in a statement by his senior special assistant on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, on Sunday in Abuja. Buhari, however, maintains that to achieve success, communities must unite against these horrific attacks, saying retributive violence was not the answer. He challenged religious, traditional, and other community leaders on the need to preach peace and not to allow the use of their spaces for the propagation of violence and incitement to violence. Senator Balana Allah has lost his eldest son. He was a pilot. Abdul Karim Balan Allah. He was killed by bandits at home in Kaduna. Now, Senator Allah represents Kebbi South Senatorial District and was the deputy majority leader in the 8th Senate. In another bandit attack, 2 people have been killed in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. The killers reportedly stormed a village in the local government and shot indiscriminately on Saturday night. The victims have been identified as Gideon Mumini and Barnabas Israel. The governor of Borno State has met with local leaders to discuss the best way to handle the issue of mass repentance of Boko Haram members. The forum, with security agencies, traditional and religious leaders, civil society organizations, and national and state lawmakers, the media, and women, took place in Government House, Maiduguri. Governor Babagana Zulum kicked off the meeting by asking the participants to speak their minds to enable Borno State come out with a workable plan to deal with the issue. Armed men said to be in a military uniform on the 28th of August invaded a hotel in Alakba community, Asha local government area of Kwara State, where they killed 1 person and abducted another in the process. This was contained in a press release sent by the State Police Public Relations Officer, Okasomi Ajayi. The PPRO said that at about 8 p.m. on August the 28th, a distress call was received by the command, which said that almost 10 armed men in military uniform invaded Zulu Abeje Hospital. Commissioner of Police on Tuesday, Asayomo, immediately contacted the Command's Tactical Unit on the information received and also called local vigilantes and OPC to get involved in the search and rescue mission. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, says Nigeria accounts for 24,000 missing people, the largest missing caseload on the continent, representing over half of those registered as missing in Africa. ICRC's Public Relations Officer, Aliu Dawobe, said more than 44,000 people across Africa have been registered as missing, with children accounting for over 45% of the cases at the time they were missing. According to him, August the 30th is marked as the International Day of the Disappeared, and that ICRC stands with the families and relatives of the missing and commemorates with them, expressing its solidarity. He said that ICRC assures them that they are not alone and their loved ones are not forgotten. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has intercepted a drug kingpin for ingesting 87 wraps of cocaine. A 41-year-old Ibe Ejike was arrested at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, on Wednesday as he arrived from Kigali. He tested positive to ingestion of drugs and excreted 87 pellets of cocaine weighing 1.884 kilograms. In another incident, a Lagos-based drug dealer, Eze Okorie, has been arrested following the interception of 4.15 kilograms of methamphetamine going to London. The drug was concealed in tins of tomato packaged for delivery at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport. Other arrests announced by NDLEA spokesman Femi Babafemi include those of 3 suspects with different weights of cocaine and skunk in Cross River State. Reproductive health experts are calling on the federal government to enforce the implementation of Nigeria's sexual and reproductive health rights policy for persons living with disability. They say that non-implementation of the policy is making access to health care services by persons living with disability difficult.
So people decide for persons with disability. The person that is having it, instead of discussing the issues with them, they discuss issues on their behalf. So that extent. So this document, this national policy document, was developed since 2018, launched by then former Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale. And since that time, I've not heard of it. And it's one of our mandates to look at sexual and reproductive health of persons with disability. So here we are today. So we call people that concerns, the media people like you, to help us create awareness.
We have a lot of issues of gender-based violence. We have issue of discrimination against these persons with disability, which even gets to the health facilities. The health workers, some health workers still discriminate against persons with disabilities, and also the issue of not having access to essential health care services that could save life. If a woman is pregnant, she's expected to have antenatal care and deliver in the health facility. If we do not implement this, the current situation might not change. And the current situation is where we have persons with disability not accessing health care as we expect.
People are still not so aware of the existence of the policy. People are still not aware of how to go about implementing the policy. So when, for instance, the communities do not even know that such a policy exists, they do not know what to go and demand for when they go visit healthcare facilities. And so even if they go and demand, the healthcare providers who are also not aware of the policy will not know what to put in place, so that when persons with disabilities come to access services, they will have access to those services. So we need to do a lot more in raising awareness on the existence of the policy, because persons with disabilities are treated from the charity perspective. They are not treated as people who have rights. Nobody really wants to pay much attention to their issues. Nobody wants to, there's no political will or commitment.
So people decide for persons with disability.
It's everywhere you look in Lagos. on the streets and drains of highbrow Victoria Island, as well as places considered to be the neighborhoods of the less privileged. I'm talking about waste. An estimated 14,000 metric tons of waste are generated in Lagos every day, and most of it is improperly disposed, constituting health and environmental hazards. In this feature, PlusTvAfrica's Mercy Ebogbo delves into the waste disposal culture of everyday Lagosian.
July the 16th was a day many people who work at the Marina, a business district in Lagos, wish never happened. This was what the parking lots of Marina looked like as it rained all day. Even after the rain stopped, it took hours before the floodwaters receded. This is one of the reasons. It's blocked drains.
Dumping waste in the gutters and water channels is a terrible thing to do. By throwing your waste, especially things like nylon bags and those pure water sachets, into those water channels, your very action might be responsible for people dying, especially children. Because those water channels is where the flood water from the rain will go. And if it's blocked, then you get floods.
Visit to some parts of Ajegunle, Obalende, Marawa, Ado, Bado ratio, clogged drains, stagnant water, and lack of water channels. These people agree to improper disposal of waste.
I litter them on the road, to be frank, because when you look around, you can't find any waste bin around. Just put them on the road, put them anywhere you find it. Comforts.
We throw it on the road now. This Nigerian.
It is a common place for people to dump bags of waste on the roadsides of Ado and Badore in Aja area. But that doesn't mean there aren't residents of Lagos who dispose of their waste properly.
You see this dirty now. This will not be dirty. When I use it finish, I can use it for my oil. But that place where we are staying, selling markets, after we clean that place, I will sweep that place. After I sweep it, I put it inside the nylon and chuck it there. So if you want to come, motor carry and go.
In my house, we do to put it inside one black nylon. Then we put it at the gate. Then the lawman that we used to pay them, they will come around and pick the refugees every Monday, at times twice in a week. They will come down and pick the refugees.
Those who do it properly pay a monthly bill to enable private contractors, known as private sector participants or PSPs, evacuate the waste to government-designated dump sites. But Maja Kudumi says there is a better way.
This practice of dumping the waste outside the house or just in the median on the road so the waste collectors can come and pick it up is not the best. It's not the best. But also from ourselves as individuals, we have to ensure that we put our waste in a place where it can be better collected. Is it so difficult to have your community, if it's a very dense community, have a few dustbins?
Lagos State generates more than 14,000 metric tons of refuse every day, according to its Ministry for the Environment and Water Resources. But only 70% of that goes to approved dump site. This means the remaining 30%, amounting to 4,200 metric tons, find its way to illegal dump sites, the streets and the drainages. That is enough waste to fill 5.6 million regular bottles of water illegally dumped in Lagos State every day. Mercy Ebogbo for PlusTvAfrica.
Into other parts of the continent now, the Senegalese renowned mediator Alioune Badara Cissé, who helped broker a peace deal during the recent violent protests, died in Dakar on Saturday. As mediator of the Republic, he called on President Macky Sall to speak out, listen to Senegalese youth, and warned against an escalation of violence when thousands of youth rioted in protest to the arrest of opposition leader Sonko. Alioune Badara Cissé was the leader of the diplomatic mission, a position he acquired through President Macky Sall, and was also the founder of the ruling party Alliance for the Republic, APR. Born in 1958, he was also the chief of staff during the reign of former President Abdoulaye Wade. Tigray rebels are accusing the African Union of bias following the appointment by the organization of a mediator in the Tigray conflict. A spokesman for the rebels has mentioned on Twitter that it would be naive to think that the mission could work. The statement comes 3 days after the appointment of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo as the representative of the AU in the Horn of Africa, with a mission to promote peace, security, stability, and political dialogue. But the Tigray rebels who are fighting for independence have stated that resolving a crisis requires at least the recognition of the existence, if not the importance, of a problem. And outside of Africa, the U.S. city of New Orleans has lost power, with only generators working as Hurricane Ida batters Louisiana. The storm brought 240 km/h winds when it made landfall, and those people who did not flee have been advised to shelter in place. One person was killed when a tree fell on their home in Ascension Parish in the Baton Rouge area. Ida will test New Orleans' flood defenses, strengthened after Hurricane Katrina killed 1,800 people in 2005. Now, President Joe Biden said Ida would be life-threatening, with immense devastation likely beyond the coasts. Now, the United Nations Atomic Watchdog in an annual report says North Korea appears to have restarted a nuclear reactor that is widely believed to have produced plutonium for nuclear weapons.
Soon be resuming production of its nuclear weapons. In its annual report dated Friday, the International Atomic Energy Agency said Pyongyang appeared to have restarted a nuclear reactor believed to have once produced plutonium for the country's nuclear arsenal. It said in its report that for 2.5 years, there had been no indications of that reactor's operation at Yongbyon, a complex at the heart of Pyongyang's nuclear program, until July. It added that the apparent restart of the reactor coincides with indications of activity at a nearby uranium mine and plant. That comes after the IAEA said there had been signs at Yongbyon of possible reprocessing work to separate plutonium from spent reactor fuel earlier this year. The IAEA, which is the UN's atomic watchdog, called the new indications deeply troubling. It monitors North Korea from afar, largely through satellite imagery, after its inspectors were expelled by Pyongyang in 2009.
Well, let's talk business now. The federal government has implemented a 7.5% tax on imported liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, popularly called cooking gas, as the cost of the commodity leaped by over 100% within a period of 8 months. The government had implemented the VAT on LPG imports about 3 weeks ago, and some dealers were also mandated to pay the tax for commodities imported several months ago. Operators said Nigeria imports about 70% of the commodity, while the rest was mainly supplied by the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company. It was also gathered that the cost of a 12.5 kg of cooking gas that sold for about 3,500 naira in December 2020 had jumped to as high as 6,800 naira in some parts of Abuja. The leaders of Uboland in Ilaje local government area of Ondo State are unhappy with what they term the high level of neglect and suffering due to oil exploration and sea incursion in their communities. They stated these on the sidelines of the inauguration of a community development trust. The newly inaugurated chairman of the community, Kelly Nomie, says the level of neglect in recent times has reached a painful threshold.
A lot of situations that we are in today has been brought upon us by the exploitation and exploration of oil, and we are supposed to benefit from that which is taken from our land. I mean, the least they can do for us is to create an enable environment.
Calling on them, no response. I've been calling on them. We've written letters, several letters, no response from federal, from state. Said Awujoba is Oba that control, but now the politicians don't want to say, if the Oba said anything, they will say they'll remove the Oba.
We face a lot of things. The Oye community, they don't have a good water to drink. We don't have electricity. We don't have a school. So a good hospital is not there.
In entertainment news now, housemate Maria, Sami and JMK have been evicted at the ongoing television reality show Big Brother Niger Season 6. The host of the show, Ebuka Obi Uchendu, announced this during the live eviction show on Sunday. The housemate initially put up for possible eviction were Cross, Maria, Pere, Sami, Queen and JMK, but 3 housemates were saved as they had the highest number of votes. Other housemates had been emotional due to the eviction as Michael, Pere and Likoros were seen crying. The reality television show commenced on July the 24th, and this is the 5th week running with 18 housemates currently on the show. Sports news now. Lionel Messi made his Paris Saint-Germain debut as a second-half substitute on Sunday at Reims, but it was Kylian Mbappe who stole the show. The French forward scored potentially his final goals for the club in a 2-0 victory. Messi was introduced in the 66th minute at the Stade Auguste Delon. This was just after Real Madrid target Mbappe had doubled both his and PSG's tally in the contest with a first-time finish. The French striker, who had headed his team in front in the first half, helped PSG make it 4 straight wins at the start of a Ligue 1 campaign for the 6th time in their history. International Paralympic Committee President Andrew Parsons says welcoming 2 newly arrived African athletes was his personal best moment of the Games. Zakai Kudadadi and Hossein Razoli arrived in Tokyo to compete in the 2020 Paralympics after Kudadadi made a video appeal for help to leave Kabul after the Taliban trapped to power. Kudadadi, a taekwondo athlete, and track athlete Razoli were evacuated from the Afghan capital a week ago and landed in Tokyo on a flight from Paris.
We will provide everything in our capacity to make their lives or their days here at the Paralympic Village, at the Paralympic Games, let's say the safest, hopefully the calmest, but as something that they, moments that they could really focus on sport and forget, for a few days at least, what they left behind and the horror they have been through in their home nation. So that was amazing. I was asked now during a few interviews this morning what was the best moment so far in these games, and to me, of course, personally, was the moment when I had the opportunity to welcome them at Tokyo.
And that's the news brief. For more, please follow us at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Justin Akadonye. Many thanks for watching. Plus Sports is up next.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of Maritime. The Matter this week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency.